if the presumption of illegality is not so high, so we believe that, well, if a dominant firm bundles its product, then we believe that on average 40% of the cases will be harmful and 60% that are benign, then a reasonably good discriminatory quality of our rule will actually reduce decision errors. So the rule gives a simple, it's based on various probabilities that you have to think about, and various parameters that define the presumption of illegality, and compares them and gives you an answer about what is the situation. That means that the competition authority has to form a prior about is the action presumptively legal or illegal, on average, is it going to harm welfare or not, and then it has also to form a prior, some belief about if I use an effects-based rule, in how many cases am I likely to find violation? And in how many, what would be the fraction of these cases where I'm likely to be right? And what would be the fraction I'm likely to be wrong? And then it has an answer to it, essentially it has an answer to each question about which rule to use. So where does this leave us? Well, it leaves us to the following. We know that from advances in industrial organization theory, but also experimental economics and empirical industrial organization theory, which it's progress that has been made over the last 25 years. We know two things. One thing that we know is that quite a lot of practices that we used to think 30 or 40 years ago that were strongly presumptively illegal are not. And bundling is a very good example. I mean, in the last 20 years, there has been a lot of models which show that a firm in many circumstances will not have even incentives in order to undertake bundling between complementary products, which is what we usually have in mind. Never mind actually have a negative effect on welfare. We also have a lot of theory and evidence showing that bundling can have a lot of efficiency effects which need to be taken into account. So the progress in economics shows first that many of these practices are not strongly presumptively illegal. And also, as we have refined our models, in the field of industrial organization, you have all these hundreds of thousands of economists working on modeling these situations. And over time, this has led to modeling market environments where these conducts emerge, and developing what are called impossibility theorems. That is, developing theorems which discriminate cases where this conduct will be harmful to welfare from cases where it's going to be benign to welfare. So we have two effects, as I mentioned, and both of these effects, if you go back here, both of these effects imply that over time we have increased the discriminatory quality of our rules, and also over time economists have shown that the strength of presumption of illegality is not so high for many of the conducts that we are talking about. So if you take both of these together, this implies that these advances should have the implication that we should be using more and more and more effects-based legal standards. Okay. So it is because of this that you find in the last 25 years that I refer to United States so often because they are sort of the benchmark for what we are saying. You find that it is the courts, the Supreme Courts often, that they go and say, look, things have changed. We know these things now, with these things now. So take it back and look at it again, because you have not proven what you are saying you have proven. And this has been happening over the years for more and more and more and more conducts. So now there is no conduct, even resale price maintenance, RPM, in the United States became a conduct that is judged, assessed, other effects based in the United States in the last few years. There is no conduct now that is not considered by per se rule. conduct related to dominant firms. So the only per se rule that is used involves, essentially, it involves price fixing, horizontal price fixing, and some forms of information exchange and things like this. Okay, so looking at the issues of decision errors, we understand that what has been happening in the last 25 years allows us to say that to reduce decision errors, we should be using more effects-based legal standards. What about deterrence? Well, you see people like, these are very prominent economists noting that decision errors are important, but deterrence effects are even more important because, okay, you investigate a case, but the case you investigate is only one of hundreds of this type of conduct that firms are undertaking, and you do not want to give wrong signals to all these firms undertaking these conducts, because you may be deterring behavior that is actually socially beneficial if you give them the wrong signal. So if you give the signal that in all cases where I find that a firm is dominant and is bundling its products, I'll find violation, then a lot of firms that do have some market power and are thinking, shall I bundle my products or not bundle my products, will decide, okay, I won't bundle my products because the competition authority may find out, and then I'm going to pay a very high fine. So they are refrained from undertaking actions that are actually socially beneficial. This is the deterrence effect. And in principle, it could be the implications for social welfare of this deterrence effect can be huge compared to the decision errors effects. This was not analyzed until recently, actually until 2009. And then what we showed with my colleague David Alf was that if you analyze this effect, then you need to look at what we call their absolute deterrence effects and differential deterrence effects. So to explain that a little bit, if you can give me one moment, then it's quite simple. If we go to the example where you use a per se legality rule, this means that you decide that, for the example of bundling, whenever you observe bundling by a dominant firm, you decide that there is violation full stop. You don't need to look at the firm's characteristics or environment. If it has market power, you decide that it violates the law. So if you introduce an effects-based rule, then you are not going to find violation in all these cases. So if there were 100 cases of bundling that appeared before you, with a per se legality by dominant firms, with a per se legality rule, in all 100 cases you will say there is violation. That's it. If you use an effects-based rule, you are not going to find violation in 100 cases. You are going to find violation perhaps in 60 cases or 50 or 20 cases. So this is what we call the absolute deterrence effect, means that you are not essentially, people expect that the authority is going to use an effects-based approach, they are not going to be deterred from undertaking this type of conduct, and in some cases, this kind of conduct will be harmful. So in this effect, the absolute deterrence effect is an effect that favors per se. Okay? Because per se says, look, I'm going to find violation in all these cases. But, there is a big but, there is a differential deterrence effect. If you use the per se legality rule, you say in all cases there is violation, but out of the 100 cases, 50 are truly benign, they are not harmful, and the truly benign, you find violation as well, you are making a mistake there. Okay? So this is what we are discussing before looking at decision errors. Now, the differential deterrence effect says that if your rule, the effects-based rule, has sufficiently discriminatory value, then you are going to persuade many more firms that are undertaking bundling that is benign, it doesn't have any harmful effects on welfare, to actually undertake it. Whilst other per se legality rule that they would not undertake it. So now the firms that you would be deterring, that you should not be deterring, are actually undertaking these socially beneficial actions. So that's a differential effect. So essentially what we are finding is that if the latter effect is sufficiently large relative to the first effect, then effects-based is going to dominate in terms of welfare again. It is going therefore to strengthen the impact that we mentioned relating to decision errors. When is it going to happen? When is the differential deterrence effect more important than the absolute deterrence effect? Well, look, the situations under which this will emerge are very similar to the situations where the cost of decision errors are lower under effects-based. Answer is when conduct is not very strongly presumptively illegal, then this will be sufficient for the differential deterrence effect to dominate, and then this implies that the deterrence effects will be superior under effects-based than under per se. So, assuming, as we did before, that for many of these conducts are not strongly presumptively illegal, means that both in terms of decision errors and in terms of deterrence effects, that effects-based are better rules to use. Then you have this argument about legal uncertainty, which is very dear, very, very dear to legal experts. Some of you will be legal experts here, perhaps, not everybody is an economist. So you will then immediately realize, understand what I'm talking about. So the legal uncertainty argument is, okay, if you use a per se rule, then firms know what the authority is going to be doing. If you say, if you have some market power and you are bound to your product will find violation, the firm knows. So there is no legal uncertainty, and the firm is happy because of this. If you start saying, I'm going to investigate this and look at that and use this evidence, etc., then the firm feels very uncertain. And there was a huge number of articles appearing after the Intel decision in Europe, because Intel was fined more than €1 billion for abusing its dominant position with royalty rebates. And a lot of legal experts have been writing, how can you use a rule to assess the Intel for its rebates, which is not so clear at the beginning, and then also fine it because you found that it's valued $1 billion. Well, it is true that to the extent that legal uncertainty is defined as the inability of an agent to assess with certainty whether or not a conduct or an action that it wishes to pursue is legal or illegal, that effects-based increases legal uncertainty. There is no doubt about that. But again, all the recent literature shows that the weight that is given to legal uncertainty is overdone. Let me be clear, because I don't want to give wrong impressions. It is overdone if you try to develop economic arguments about the influence of legal uncertainty, then the effect is overdone. If you want to take a much more, how should I say, a much more, the legal experts take what I consider a more philosophical approach towards legal uncertainty. They say, we don't like uncertainty. Firms do not like uncertainty, so you should eliminate uncertainty per se, full stop. Now, this I cannot answer, okay? I only tell them, but I find your argument impossible, because if we decide on the basis of this argument, then it's like you are saying that you prefer to be certainly wrong than uncertainly correct. So I don't accept that. Therefore, here is an economic argument, and the economic argument says that if you look at this, then there is certainly no monotonic link between legal uncertainty and welfare. That is, you can increase the legal uncertainty in the standards in the rule that it uses, and welfare can actually go up. People will say, but this is amazing, it can happen. It can happen. Why? Because it can have raising legal uncertainty a little bit. Again, I don't want to give the wrong impression. Creating what we call partial legal uncertainty can have beneficial deterrence effects on firms. And by having these beneficial deterrence effects, you can actually show, you can prove beyond a doubt that it may be a good idea to create some legal uncertainty. Actually, this idea has been known to people dealing with tax policy, not competition policy, for a long time in many countries, North America, England, etc. For tax policy, in purpose the government introduces some uncertainty because they believe that this will have beneficial deterrence effects. Of course, effects-based also has higher administrative rules, so administrative costs, so we need to take those into account. And in order to compensate for this, we have to show that there are strong potential benefits. And since all the arguments that we have shown up to now indicate that there are potentially strong potential benefits, we are left with a gap in our understanding, which is, well, economists have been trying for years and have shown that it is a good idea to use effects-based. Why is it that only 5 jurisdictions out of 150 use effects-based, and the others use less than effects-based, and in some cases they use %? We have the arguments, we have the articles, we have the literature which shows that it is a good thing. Why is it? So there must be some other issues that prevent authorities using effects-based. And there are, I think I have perhaps passed over my time, so perhaps I'll go a bit more quickly. I'm sure I passed my time. Yes? Okay, so you give me 10 minutes more. Or okay, yes, that's great. Okay, perhaps I'll try to finish before 10 minutes. But sorry about that. I thought that this, if you're not familiar with this literature, I should go a little more in detail. So what other factors are important? One important, which I had told you at the beginning that we should come back to, is the issue of the substantive standard. What is the ultimate objective of the competition authority? So